Hello, my name is Trainmaster04 and welcome back to my channel. In this video I'll be reviewing the New Mexican Queen herself, Santa Fe 2926 from Lionel. So sit back and relax and enjoy the show.
Albuquerque engine 3001. Start her up, stand by to pull. Over. Copy that, Albuquerque. We'll start her up. 3001 out.
Santa Fe 2926 is considered a northern type steam locomotive with a 484 wheel arrangement underneath the locomotive. 2926 was originally built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works in May of 1944 and was given the designation 2900 class. Besides herself, there were 30 other 2900 class locomotives built for the Santa Fe, the first one being number 2900, built in 1943, and the last one being built in 1944, number 2929. The reason why Santa Fe ordered these locomotives so late was due to the increase of wartime demand for freight and passenger services across the United States. Also due to the wartime restrictions, these locomotives became the heaviest passenger locomotives ever built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works and the heaviest in the United States. As a result, these locomotives were considered the war babies of the Santa Fe. 2926 and her siblings saw a fruitful career on the Santa Fe, first being delegated to the New Mexican region of the Santa Fe during World War II, where they saw themselves not pulling passenger trains as they were designed for, but instead being used for heavy, fast freight trains that ran through the region. However, after World War II ended in April of 1945, the 2900s saw themselves in the limelight of passenger services by pulling the Scout and the Grand Canyon Limited across the Santa Fe Railroad. Over time, these locomotives became synonymous to the Santa Fe's and became a part of the Big Three, the 3460 class, the Northerns, and also the 210-4s. Also, over the years, these locomotives were received upgrades from their original designs. Between 1946 and 1948, Santa Fe equipped these locomotives with Timken roller bearings and tandem side rods, which 2926 still retains to this day. However, these locomotives were not resilient to dieselization, and the last revenue service the 2926 herself pulled was in 1953. By the 1950s, steam was almost completely dead by the beginning of dieselization, and in 1959, Santa Fe was no exception. In 59, 2926 and her siblings faced the cutter's torch. However, she and 5 other siblings found themselves in the limelight of preservation. In this case, the other 5 siblings were 2903, 2912, 2913, 2921, and 2925 all found themselves in preservation. For 2926, in 1956, she found herself being donated to the Colorado Park in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It may seem that this would become the end for 2926. However, in 1999, she was purchased by the New Mexican Steam Locomotive and Railroad Historical Society to be rebuilt for operation purposes. However, operation restoration would not have commenced until 2002. In May of 2002, Santa Fe 2926 found itself being moved outside of her current resting place in Colorado Park across the Albuquerque city all the way to the Historical Society's property. It wasn't until 20 years later of grueling, loving care of restoring this locomotive through the help of employees, organizations, and pure volunteer power, the locomotive found itself being fired up and running under its own power after it being retired on July 24, 2021. The locomotive also found itself being taken apart in 3 minor excursions, 2 of which going down to the local Tractor Brewing Company in Albuquerque, and then another one finally reaching the high iron again. First time she's touched the high iron after many years of her retirement later in the year of 2023. Currently, the Historical Society have big plans for the locomotive. They wish to use the locomotive as a symbol for the former 2900 class locomotives and also the Santa Fe Railroad and steam preservation. They would like to use her for excursion runs between Albuquerque and Las Vegas, New Mexico, and are currently working on restoring a turntable that is large enough to turn the locomotive around to allow her to go back to Albuquerque. As of now, there are no excursions dated at this time, but I would suggest visiting the New Mexico Railroad Historical Society's website and check them out every once in a while. With the history on the real Santa Fe 2926 taken care of, let's go over all these stats and facts about the model. This model was recently released in Lionel's 2023 Volume 1 catalog and soon started shipping out to dealers around November of the same year. Besides 2926 that you see right in front of you, Lionel also offered many different variations of the 2900 series of locomotives, including another 2926 as seen on the Santa Fe. The difference between the 2926 you see here and the other 2926 is the paint job and a few minute details. In this case, the other 2926 does not have a glossy finish, instead has a normal matte finish, has a darkened smokebox front, and also darkened side rods to give it a more work hard feeling. For the measurements, this locomotive has a combined length of 31¼ inches, making this one of the largest northerns Lionel has ever produced, and also giving this locomotive a minimum curve radius of 0.72. Now, if you have picked up one of the hard copies of that 2023 Volume 1 catalog, you may notice Lionel made a typo stating that the minimum curve radius for this locomotive is 0.31. In fact, that is incorrect. If you do try to run this locomotive with 0.31, you will find yourself derailing it. Under the hood, this locomotive is powered by one large flywheeled motor and is also equipped with two fan-driven smoke units, both of which are located up front. The first smoke unit being used for the main smokestack, and the second one being used for the smoking whistle, not too far away from the stack. For electronics, this locomotive is equipped with Lionel's Legacy Rail Sounds features, which means you have the options for 5 different whistles, 5 different bells, and various other sound features, which we'll cover later on in this video. For command system, this locomotive is operated by Lionel's Legacy Command System, which means this locomotive has 5 options of running. First is using Lionel's Cab 3 system, which still hasn't been able to come out yet, but soon will be available for all consumers. Second is using Lionel's current command system, which is using their Legacy Cab 2 command system, which will allow you to access all of the features that this model has to offer. Third is using Lionel's TMCC or Cab 1 command system. Third is using Lionel's Bluetooth app. And fifth is using conventional mode by simply placing your locomotive on a loop of track and powering it with a transformer. Before we go and move on to the next segment of this video, I would like to take a side note on the model itself, and that being the tooling used to make this model. This model is not an original design by Lionel. Instead, it is an MTH product that they started producing in the PS1 days and ended it all the way up to PS3. You can still purchase a number of these models in the PS1 to PS3 range on the secondhand market. However, when MTH was deciding to downsize and sell off a number of their old tooling for most of their locomotives and rolling stock, Lionel was able to grab the 2900 series tooling and produce their own. Along the way, Lionel did make a few modifications to give it their own touch, such as adding the Legacy Rail Sounds features, command control, also adding whistle steam, which is a first to the 2900 series and O gauge, but Lionel also did keep a few MTH details that you typically do not see on Lionel Legacy models that they have produced, such as the separately applied linkage going to the mechanical lubricator. That is something MTH always did, and it's nice to see Lionel kept that. With the model stats and facts covered, let's go ahead and take a closer look at all the details. Starting at the front of the locomotive, here you can see the locomotive is nicely detailed with a boiler tube pilot that is painted in that glossy black, has 2 separately applied steps leading up to the pilot itself, 2 molded in polling holes. In this case, this is a practice well out of date and is quite unsafe. A separately applied Cutler cut bar goes across the pilot itself with a chain going off of the end of it, leading into a dummy scale coupler. Right next to the coupler cut bar, we also have a separately applied brake hose. Nice little detail. Moving up to the pilot itself, here you can see we have a nice separately applied die-cast metal air compressor shield with a separately applied grab iron going across it. And behind the shield itself, you can see we have various equipment, which is also separately applied, such as 2 air compressors on either side. Moving on up from the pilot, here you can see we are now faced with the smokebox front, which is prototypically painted in a silver paint. Traditionally, locomotives, even the other 2900 series locomotives, would not have this silverly white-ish boiler front, but instead would have a gunmetal gray. But since this model is representing the 2926 as she is today, this is prototypically correct. For details, you can see the boiler front is nicely detailed with molded in rivet details, 2 separately applied marker lights which can be cycled through from green to white or off, a nice brass bell which is also nicely detailed with a yoke on the inside. In the center we have a central headlight which comes on when the locomotive is in operation, and underneath the headlamp itself it has a nice crisp looking number board with the numbers 2926. Finally, the boiler front also has the ability to open up like so. Moving over to the engineer side of the locomotive, starting at the bottom working up to the top, here you can see we have the first set of cylinders for this locomotive. In this case, it is detailed with some molded in rivet detailing and pipework towards the top. Right next to it, here you can see we have the crosshead, which is nicely polished and is the correct single type. Right next to it, there is also some molded in and separately applied details surrounding the crosshead, such as a separately applied ladder leading up to a mechanical lubricator, which is adorned with separate linkage leading to the Walschaerts valve gear. Up top above the cylinders, here you can see we have the running board, which does have molded in safety tread on top that leads down to a ladder going to the pilot. Above that, we have the boiler itself. The boiler is nicely painted in the glossy black finish, which is prototypical to the real 2926. For details, as you can see, it is adorned and molded in rivets and also boiler bands, has a separately applied handrail that goes along the length of the boiler, has a separately applied pipe that goes up to the top of the boiler, and finally a legible, separately applied builder's plate right in the middle of the smoke box. Moving on down the boiler, on the bottom here you can see we have the massive 8 driving wheels, which do look very nice when the locomotive's up to speed, as well as all of the running gear. Up top, here you can see we have the various appliances for the locomotive, such as a separately applied air compressor tank and also the power reverser that goes to the Walschaerts valve gear, various separately applied pipe work going under the running board, and up on the boiler itself you can see we have yet even more details, such as molded in rivet detailing, the continuation of that handrail, the throttle linkage leading up to the superheater up front, and also some molded in details surrounding the sand dome. Finally, taking a quick look at the firebox and cab area on the locomotive, here you can see is the locomotive's 4-wheel trailing truck, which is surrounded by separately applied piping, the firebox itself with its molded in rivet detailing and molded in pipework leading up to the side of the boiler, separately applied steps leading up to the running boards, and various other details hidden within the locomotive. Looking at the cab itself, here you can see it is minimalistically detailed, but it does have a few features, such as molded in rivet detailing, sun visor, and handrail above the sun visor, but it also has a few separately applied pieces, such as window glass for the front window, 2 side windows, and then an open area with a molded in ledge. Looking at the back of the locomotive, here inside the cab, as you can see, there is various details still to be shown. In this case, the locomotive is equipped with a nicely detailed back head with various valves and gauges that are hand-painted that really do stand out against the black background. Here in the center is a nice little shelf for the crews to store their oil cans and various tools, and in the bottom, the firebox door. Since this locomotive is an oil-burning locomotive instead of coal, the firebox door is not as what you would expect. In this case, instead of a butterfly doorway, you have a single cast piece. However, Lionel has made a technical error with the firebox door by drilling all these small holes in the piece itself to allow the firebox glow effect to come through. In reality, the real 2926's firebox door would not have all of these holes surrounding it, but instead it would have this center hole, which Lionel has represented, which would allow crews to dump sand to clean out the flues and tubes, and also to be able to take a quick inspection of the fire itself. So though it is nice Lionel has included the firebox glow effect, it does kind of detract the realism with all these holes. Besides the firebox door, there is also two hand-painted crew figures, one on either side of the cab, and both are illuminated quite nicely with a soft-glowed LED up in the roof of the cab, which comes on when the locomotive is stationary. Coming on outside of the cab, you can see we have three separately applied curtains, two separately applied grab irons next to two windows with separately applied plastic glazing, molded in rivet detailing around the perimeter, and finally at the bottom, the infrared drawbar for the locomotive. On top of the boiler, starting at the smoke box and working down to the cab, up front, the smoke box itself is nicely detailed with a molded-in Worthington feed water heater, molded-in boiler bands, rivets, and also a superheater patch. And also, it is equipped with a separately applied whistle with the smoking whistle hole discreetly hidden behind the detail. In the center, here is the main smokestack for the locomotive, and it is quite unique for this model in that it is interchangeable between two other smokestack options. First option is a standard steam locomotive smokestack, nothing fancy there, something that you would see on a standard steam locomotive, and is equipped on the model when you pull it out of the box. Second stack option is a curved collapsible stack that forces the smoke coming out of the locomotive to take a more horizontal direction instead of vertically as you would see on standard locomotives. And the third and final option, which you actually can see on the real 2926, and it is a standard extension stack that forces the smoke to rise up into the air a little higher above the crew and also the passenger train behind the locomotive, allowing the smoke to not inhibit any view for the crew. Now, as stated earlier on in this video, this locomotive is equipped with two fan-driven smoke units, both of which are located up front in the smoke box, one for the main stack and the second for the smoking whistle. In order to fill the smoke units with smoke fluid, all you have to do is simply remove one of these stack options and pour your smoke fluid directly down the stack. Moving over across the boiler, here we have two separately applied number boards, which do come on when the locomotive is in operation, which straddles a separately applied pipework that runs along the side of the boiler. Right next to the number boards is the sand dome, which is nicely detailed with the number 2926 scripted on either side and three molded in sand hatches on top. However, the look of the sand dome may deceive you from a glance, but if I remove the top, which is held by magnets, it reveals all of the operational switches required to fully function this locomotive. Continuing down the boiler, first up here is the steam dome, which is nicely polished in that very shiny gloss paint and is connected to two separately applied pipework leading down to a molded-in turret, which has molded-in rivet detailing and also two molded-in hatches leading to various equipment located inside. In between the pipework, however, here we have the safety valves, which are pretty exposed but are prototypical to the real 2926, a separately applied dynamo generator, and various other equipment. On the cab itself, it is pretty modernized in the sense that it is minimalist in detail. There are, however, a few nice little details here and there, such as molded-in rivets on either side and two air hatches on top, which open and close like so. Finally, taking a quick look at the fireman's side of the locomotive, and as you can see, it is pretty much identical compared to the engineer's side, minus a few little details, such as a larger air compressor tank underneath the locomotive's running board, and also some feed water heater equipment also located underneath the locomotive's running board. But besides that, it's pretty much identical. Moving over to the tender, starting at the front, as you can see, it is modestly detailed with molded-in and separately applied details, such as two molded-in steps leading up to a molded-in tender deck platform. On the front panel itself, it is equipped with two separately applied grab irons on either side, molded-in rivet detailing, toolboxes, and a sandbox in the middle. Coming back down to the bottom, here we have the tender end of that infrared drawbar, which is a little unique in that it is equipped with the kinematic drawbar system, which means it automatically goes back into the center when the locomotive is straight, but when it goes around curves, it pulls out and allows the gap between the tender and the locomotive to be a little greater to allow clearances to be a little easier. Overall, a nice feature and was not expecting it on this model. Moving over to the engineer side of the tender, and at a first glance, as you can see, the tender overall is a beast. It is almost as long as the locomotive itself, and it is no wonder why Lionel has rated the locomotive to have a minimum curve radius of 0.72. This thing is a beast. But overall, we're not here on appearances, but instead looking at details. So let's get into them. Starting at the bottom, the locomotive have nice sets of trucks underneath. In this case, they are the Centipede or 8-wheel truck design, prototypical to the real 2900s, and they also have nice little details such as molded in brake shoes, spring rigging, and also some separately applied details such as chains on all four corners of the tenders, something reminiscent to the MTH days. In the center, here is a separately applied toolbox with some minor molded in detail. On the tender side paneling itself, it is nicely adorned in that deep black glossy paint finish with molded in rivet detailing going across the whole side of the tender. And in the middle, we have the nice, clear and crisp Santa Fe Herald and 2926 in the middle. Very nice, and the paint scheme, I might add, is correct in that silverish gray paint scheme instead of straight up white. Looking at the back of the tender, starting at the bottom, here we have two separately applied ladders going up to the tender deck itself, and in the middle, the electrocoupler for this model. In this case, the electrocoupler can be thrown by either using Lionel's Cab 3, Cab 2, Cab 1, or Bluetooth command systems. On the back paneling itself, it has a nice curved appearance to it, which is, again, prototypical to the real 2926 and really gives it a feel of a modern steam locomotive at the end of the steam era with that semi-streamlining and economist feel. But for details itself, it is loaded with molded in rivet detailing, crisp patterning all across the back paneling itself with two separately applied grab irons on either side, a separately applied ladder leading up to the upper deck, the number 2926 again scripted on the back panel, and then some information about the capacity for the water and oil towards the top. On top of the tender, starting from the right and working down to the left, here on the right hand side, instead of a coal bunker, instead this locomotive is an oil burner, so here we have the oil tank for the tender. In this case, it is nicely detailed with molded in rivet detailing, molded in tool chests, separately applied pipe work, and also two separately applied grab irons on top of the deck itself. In the center, originally the MTH model had these oil fill hatches as molded in details, but Lionel has recently rectified that when they purchased the tooling and made them accessible. Coming down to the water tank area, similar to the oil tank, it is also crisscrossed with various molded in rivet detailing, but instead of grab irons and oil hatches, there instead are water hatches. Again, similar to the MTH model, these were static items but now have been recently rectified. And finally, lonely off into the left top hand corner is the separately applied reverse light, which comes on when the locomotive is put into reverse. With the locomotive and tender covered, let's go ahead and fire up this locomotive and go over all the sound features.
Train 1 brakeman, let's get an application for continuity test. Good application, okay to release. Train 1 brakeman, we have good set, good release, good continuity on timetable train number 1. Over.
That's a roger. Good set, good release, good continuity on timetable train number 1. Out.
With the locomotive fired up, let's go over all the sound features. First up, here are the 5 different whistle options. Next up, here's the bell. Here is the steam blowdown sound. Here is the water and oil fill-up sounds.
My water's full. Out.
And finally, here is a sampling of the crew and Towercom chatter. Some people like them, some people hate them. I'm somewhere in between, so let's just go ahead and go over those sound features.
Tower, ready to make our pull. Can we get permission to occupy the main? Over.
Please hold. Getting your route line now. Out. These long waits are brutal. At least the back hit keeps the coffee hot. Gonna be here a while. Timetable has a plug here for number 9. She's running about 20 minutes late. Chronometer's heading your way. Make sure everything's good.
My all's full. Out. Tower, ready to make our pull. Can we get permission to occupy the main? Over.
Clear to proceed east from where you stand at track speed. Out.
Alrighty, I got a passenger train hooked up behind the tender. We've been given the green signal, so let's go ahead and take a spin around the layout.
Dispatcher, clear signal in the cab. We're underway. Over.
Have a safe ride. Out.
That about wraps up this product review, but before you go, let me go ahead and answer the two questions that I normally ask around this time of the video, and they are, what is the original MSRP price for one of these models, and also what is my opinion on it? Well, to start off, the original MSRP price for one of these models is right at $1,800. Now, though that is a steep price tag for an MSRP, the Locomotive is actually available on many other retailer sites such as trainworld.com and Charles Rowe, which both carry the Locomotive and sell it at a lower price. So I would definitely go and check out one of those two websites before you go and purchase it off of Lionel's website. But do hurry, because I have a feeling both 2926 versions and all of the other 2900 series locomotives Lionel's produced will be gone very quickly. Now let's move over to the second question, which was, what is my personal opinion on the model? Overall, when I first opened up this locomotive from its shipping box, revealed it from underneath its protective plastic, I was breathtakingly taken back to the day when I first saw the 2926 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This locomotive is so well detailed and just reeks of the real 2926 and the 2900 series locomotives so well that I was just blown away. Compared to the real thing, yes, there are a few minute details, such as the side rods not really being roller-bearing side rods and the drivers not being a mismatch between Baldwin disc and also another type of driver that is on the real 2926, and also a few minute details being a little lacking, such as the lack of a whistle cord and bell cord, but overall the locomotive is just wonderful. For operation, the locomotive ran flawlessly. There were a few things that I did not quite like when I ran the locomotive, such as the whistle steam not really coming out through the whistle hole, but instead being redirected through the stack and producing a more thicker plume of smoke through the stack than actually coming through the whistle. Something that has been going on with Lionel locomotives with whistles being so close to the smokestack, but is really not a game changer for me. And another problem that I noticed with these locomotives, and also some of the future locomotives, such as the Vision Line Big Boy that Lionel just came out with, was the volume of the speaker. I noticed when the locomotive was running, the chuff did not sound as boisterous and loud as some of even my smaller locomotives that I have, and made me question whether or not the locomotive was given a cheaper speaker that was not producing as loud of a sound, or it had a smaller baffle producing the same result. Overall, though, I am quite pleased with how this locomotive came out, and I would definitely suggest it for anybody looking for another addition to their Santa Fe fleet, or just going and wanting to get a model of the real 2926. We have now come to our destination at the end of this product review. But before I go, I just want to say thank you very much for clicking on this video and also watching it to the very end. It takes me a great deal of time to produce these high quality videos for you all to enjoy, and I do dearly appreciate your viewership. If you would like to support my channel even further, please go ahead and click that subscribe button, as that allows you to no longer miss any of my future videos, whether they are product reviews, how-tos, or even YouTube shorts. While you're at it, if you have enjoyed this video, please go ahead and click that like button, as that lets me know that you are actually enjoying this type of content, and also lets YouTube know that my content is actually worth something. But anyway, my name is Trainmaster04, and I'll be seeing you next time.
Dispatch, this is 3001. We are done for the day. Heading to the register room to sign out.